Building layered embellishment clusters can be kind of tricky. So for today's video, we're going to make a layout, but I'm going to spend most of the time walking you through how I put my clusters together and really focusing on that part of the layout. Of course, I want to share with you the gorgeous paper I'm using. This is going to be a fall themed layout. And this is the new Gathering Together paper collection. It has champagne foil in it, and it is just so pretty. There's some really nice subtle prints, lots of that foil. I like the softness of the champagne color. We got tone on tone prints, and then of course, gorgeous fall leaves. I'm so excited to work with this paper. It's the first time I'm kind of cracking into this new paper pack. And look at that one. Isn't that gorgeous? Now I am saving some of this paper because I know there is a scrapbooking workshop coming that I'm going to want to make with it. Little hint, hint. But I do have a few sheets that I can use. I think this one is maybe my favorite. I love all the colors in there. Super pretty. And then one more with the foil striping and a nice distressed pattern. So gorgeous papers. If you have not picked that one up yet, I highly recommend if you love to scrapbook fall. I actually have pictures from going to the pumpkin patch and picking out pumpkins and gourds last fall. So you can see there, I've already gone ahead and matted these because I was just trying to shorten up some of these steps because we are going to focus on our embellishment clusters today. But super cute. We had such a fun time. It was a beautiful, warm, sunny day, and there was just piles of pumpkins. They had this cute little like photo booth opportunity kind of thing, and you can see here we're just filling up the trunk with all the different pumpkins and gourds and everything, and we had such a good time. There was actually almost, I think there was nobody there or almost no one there when we were, so we had the place to ourselves, and it was just such a fun couple of hours. I opted to start my layout with basic beige as my backgrounds. Instead of white, I wanted something that was close to white, but this gives a little bit more softness and not quite as stark. So I've gone ahead and cut down my papers. And I should mention I am using a sketch for this layout. This is from page 11 in our 12 by 12 volume 3. It was actually designed with 6 by 6 papers in mind, so most of the cuts can be made from 6 by 6 papers, but of course you can use full-size sheets 12 by 12. You just cut it down to the size that you need. I'm gonna go ahead and just start sticking my pieces down, and then I'll come back when I'm all done and we can move on to the next step. Here we are so far. I went ahead and put my photo mats down. I was following the placement of the sketch. I did switch out the 6x4 for 2 3x4s here because I just have way more portrait photos. Same here, put in portrait photos because that's what I have. And now you can see I have the base of a cluster here. I wanted to get this stuck down because I wanted to attach all my photo mats so I knew they were in place. I did leave this corner here without any tape so that I can tuck under there. Same with over here. I know I'm going to want to tuck, so I left this whole top without any adhesive. You can always go back later with a little bit of liquid glue and just squirt it under there if you're worried about it coming up. And this tag here, and then I cut a couple more tags with this die. This is Merry Tags and More. It's one of the Paper Pumpkin special die sets. So when you subscribe to Paper Pumpkin, there is a quarterly die set that comes out that matches those 3 months worth of kits. You have the option to purchase that if you are a subscriber. So that one was the one I think over the winter, last Christmas sometime. And I just using the tag from that one. It has a nice little stitching line around it. I always like the dies that have stitching detail. Just adds a little something extra. And these ones, I know I'm going to want to make a cluster here. Now, I'm not sure if I want to put them in kind of like that, like in a tiered look, or maybe if I want to rotate this one and have it just kind of tucking out like that. I don't think I want to have it this way because then I'm going to have some twine like right on the edge of my layout if I want to put twine in that hole. So we'll just put it there for now and then see if this makes more sense after. This one is attached down because I know that's where I want it to be. Okay, now for a lot of you, I think this is where you kind of get stuck, even if you're using a sketch, right? You picked your papers, you cut them down, you have your photos, and then it's now what? So I'm just going to walk you through my thought process. And the first thing that I want to go do is find some embellishments that coordinate. This is a fall layout. That could be leaves, it could be pumpkins. There's mushrooms in this paper. You could add some cute little mushrooms in here if you wanted to. And I am going to be looking for a variety of different sizes. I want larger embellishments, smaller embellishments. I need to come up with a title. So the sketch had the title going up here, so I could overlap it right there, or I could move it down to this area. I got a lot of space right here. In the sketch, there was some embellishment here, and there was also some journaling strips. So for me, this is where I always go to my stamps and dies. Unless I know that I have a sticker sheet or something that coordinates, my first step is to just start pulling in my stamps and dies. So right off the bat, I know I want to use Gathering Moments because this is a new set that just came out. And I think it will go really well with all of this. It has the leaves. It has these giant leaves. So these are really big. You can see it's the size of my hand. And I love that you have the option to just cut the outline, or you can cut this inside piece. And this inside piece actually has piercing holes. So I have one here that I cut on scrap paper. And you can see it has all these holes, kind of where the veins would be for the leaf. Now you could leave it just with the holes like that, but these are designed for hand stitching. So using twine or embroidery floss, things like that, to actually stitch through the holes. And you can see these are great embellishments for scrapbooking because they are definitely scrapbook page sized. They're nice and large. And there is 2 different styles. And then there's a bunch of really cute images in this set. We have mushroom, acorn, some different kinds of leaves, little branch with berries on it. And then we have some texture stamps as well, which are great to add to clusters if you need a little something extra in the background. So my first things to do with a cluster is to pick my largest items first. So if I want to use one of these leaves, that's going to be one of the main things of my cluster because it is so big. Your big items might be tags, right? The base layers. Kind of have to think of it as your foundation. You're laying the foundation for your cluster, and then you can tuck other smaller things in around it. Now, I was pretty sure that I wanted to use this for my title. This is actually an older, close to my heart set, Pumpkin Spice Scrapbooking. Cutest pumpkin in the patch. There's actually a couple of really cute sayings in here. And I went ahead and just stamped this on a Spotlight on Nature circle die cut with early espresso ink. And I love how that looks. This is pretty large, so this cluster is going to have to be a decent size to support 2 items that are that big. Typically, I like to size it down. So like 1 large, maybe a few medium, a few small, maybe some gems to like finish out the cluster. But I really like this title, and I just don't see anywhere else on my page where I can put it and have it fit in. I mean, I could tuck it right there, but I feel like it's just too crowded up in that corner. So I'm thinking something like that. Don't worry, this is not the color I'm using. This is just my like scrap paper. I'm trying to work my way through like old close to my heart cardstock, especially colors that I really don't like. This was a color called Flaxen, and I've just been like using it for my scrap die cuts and when I'm trying things out. Now I went ahead and stamped some of the leaves that are in that Gathering Moments set. Nothing fancy, just stamp them out. I'm using the basic beige color of cardstock, and I used the darker side. And I have Cajun Craze, Crushed Curry, and this is Old Olive, and then Early Espresso for my little acorns. And I did stamp a few leaves. I have some more off to the side here. I just like to stamp a whole bunch and like switch out what colors things are stamped in so that I have some options when I'm putting my clusters together, because I don't want to have everything in the same tone. I want to vary it a little bit. So this larger leaf here, I would consider that kind of like a medium-sized item for our cluster. I'm thinking maybe what I want to do is bring in some leaves on the side over here. So let's go ahead and grab one of these guys. So I want the ends to be tucked under my circle that's going to hide kind of like the ugly ends. And I want to just build like a little cluster. So let's add a little bit smaller one. I could tuck this over top or underneath, whatever kind of works. Now I have some stamped images. I have a die cut image. I also want to mix in some other things. So I have die cut these little like berry branches. This is from a new set called Branching Out, and it's this little one right here. I got this set because one, I love shapes that have the stitching detail on them, and I don't have anything in this shape. So that's always a good one. And then we have these little branches, kind of like pine-ish, spruce branch. I don't know what kind they are. They're some kind of needle tree, and they're a branch. And then I thought those would be perfect for making clusters with. There's a little pine cone, and then this little berry branch. All things that you could tuck into clusters. These would be great in some like winter or Christmas clusters. So I cut these out of the light side of Early Espresso. So my mats here are Early Espresso. And then I've been loving the whole double matting thing lately. So I have some white, very thin mat of white, and then my photo. And I feel like that creates a lot of good contrast. So I thought I would switch it up a little bit and use the light side. I love having double-sided cardstock because it gives you more options for colors. I know I want to have another cluster here because the way this stamp is, see how it like makes a hole right here? I feel like if I don't put something here, it's gonna look sort of weird. Maybe have them like hanging off the side a little bit. I have a red one here in this smaller. I want to kind of keep my ends together so they look like they're just kind of like coming from the same place. And I'm also thinking I have these little acorns and I could layer them up together and use that to hide the bottoms. I just like the way it looks if the ends of leaves are not sticking out. I have another one of these little branches, just helps break things up a little bit. Now I do need to recut this in the right color. I want to bring in some yellow. I think this is looking pretty good, but sometimes clusters can tend to look like a little bit too tight together, and I want some more like poking out, kind of like, I don't know, branching out, if you will, from this. So I went hunting through my floral sets and I found this one. This one actually has a couple of nice little like leaf options. It has this little like branch option. Either one of those would actually work really good. I'm gonna cut a few of these and then see if that will add just a little bit more interest to my cluster. Okay, I decided to cut it out of the gold foil paper. This is champagne foil in here, but it actually matches fairly close. I'm thinking kind of like that, and then maybe over here to just kind of like extend this a little bit. I really love the ability of leaves to help like taper out a cluster and just, I don't know, make it so it's not so blunt. So it's not ending like just so tight together. It kind of elongates it and helps it connect to the photos. See, because it's touching up here and it just feel like it extends it really nice. But let's leave this one for now. That's kind of like my biggest cluster. And I'm gonna wanna repeat some of the same elements in my cluster up here, but I wanna make it smaller. So I'm not gonna start with a huge leaf. My bigger items for this cluster are these background pieces. Now I think because we have this piece of Cajun Craze paper in the background, I'm gonna stay away from using anything stamped in that color So that leaves me my yellow and green options. Building clusters is something that does get easier with practice and once you kind of know what you want. Everybody has a different comfort level of what they like. I usually like fairly full clusters. I usually like a lot of pieces, a lot going on, and sometimes I have a hard time stopping, but you might like it with less. And I think one of the biggest things that helps is if you repeat elements. So I want to bring some of that gold up here. And then I also want to repeat the little acorn. I just think that's such a cute way to cover up the bottom of my leaves. I could tuck my leaves under the photo, but I like this better with it layered over top. And I think that's just such a cute way. I'm probably going to use dimensionals to pop this one up, and then I will keep the rest of those flat. I'm probably going to do the same thing down here. Keep one of these flat, pop one of them up, whichever one is on top. Now, I don't know yet if I want to put some twine through the little loop of that tag, or if maybe just putting the leaves over it will cover that loop, and we'll just call that good. Usually my clusters never look 100% from where I first place them. I always lay them out first and see if I like it, try different things. Sometimes you find the best options just by rotating a piece, tweaking it, putting something over instead of under, those kind of things. You really can fuss with it for a very long time. I am going to put my journaling in here, so don't worry about this weird looking gap. There is a purpose to that. And remember, when you are doing your embellishments, it's always nice to have your 3 spots. Lots of times I do more than 3 spots, and I'll actually show you an example of that here in a little bit. But I want to kind of get this one pretty much done, and then I will talk you through that. Also, if you're using a sketch, it really helps to see where the designer put those embellishments and just follow along, right? I didn't come up with this placement all on my own. There was a piece layered there. So the embellishments are shown with flowers on this sketch. Same with here. That cluster is kind of wrapping the bottom of the photo. So I'm very much following that. And then another cluster over here. So you see we have something very similar happening over on this side as well. Now I think I want to have another one of these big leaves over here. I'm hoping I left myself enough room. I decided to cut this one out of the green, the old olive, because this one's going to be out of yellow, and I think that will be a good balance. I think if I did it both out of yellow, it might be too much yellow. And then I want to have a few leaves poking out here. So now it's just a matter of seeing where everything's going to work, seeing if maybe I want to rotate this tag, because I want enough empty space up here. If there's too much pattern paper, I think it's just going to look too busy. And don't be afraid to layer your pieces over top of other pieces. And then of course I want to repeat the gold. So we could stick that over there in that corner. I might also want to scatter some gems. So this would be a good spot to do that. A little bit open area, scatter some gems. Now I do want to add a little acorn over here somewhere, just because I have acorns in my other 2 clusters. And I think it looks best when you repeat elements and you have that continuity going through all of your clusters. They don't have to be exactly the same, right? I have some variation in the sizes of my leaves, the little like sprigs and stuff. They are in the same colors, just so that it all looks like it goes together. Now remember I told you these leaves were designed for hand stitching. Well, I want to do some stitching on my 2 main leaves here. Of course, this is gonna get cut out of crushed curry. This is just like a little placeholder for it. So I wanna grab my stitching supplies and then we can get going on that. So I did debate whether I wanted to use linen thread or DMC floss. There is this new one that has early espresso and old olive in it. So I could definitely use the old olive, or you could do like tone on tone, but I want it to stand out a little bit. I'm not sure I want to go that dark though. So I was looking through my DMC floss and I have this Ecru color, and I think that would go really nice. It's the same tone as the basic beige cardstock, And I think that would work both for the green and the yellow. And you're gonna want some sort of a foam pad. This one was made for stitching. I bought it many years ago. And then I have a tapestry needle here. So the tapestry needles are great because they have larger eyes on the needles and then they are blunt on the ends. So you're not going to be piercing yourself and you can use larger size threads. You're gonna want some sort of a piercing tool. Now, if you want to use the holes that the die cuts for you, you can just go ahead and start stitching. So a basic back stitch, I'm gonna go one hole ahead, and you can either hold on to your end or you can use a little piece of Scotch tape. It's usually what I do rather than trying to knot it, because knots make like a bigger lump on the back. I find tape works really well. So I just went up the second hole, down the first hole, and then skip ahead to the next open hole and go down. And that is a basic back stitch, right? And you could go along and just stitch your way all the way. But I have another idea that I actually got from my friend, Janice Gilhooly. We were chatting about this and she gave me a great idea. I'm not sure if I'm gonna do exactly what she had in mind, but the inspiration came from her. So I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna use this as a template and I'm gonna pierce some of my own holes. I'm gonna use a few of these, but I am gonna pierce some of my own. So I'm actually using my Cricut tool. I really like this one because it has a very pointy end and it can make the hole bigger the farther you push it in. So I find that very useful. I'm gonna go ahead, pierce holes down the center here. I just have to figure out where I want to stop. What I wanna do is have my twine come out in like little rays, like this. So I'm gonna eyeball this. It may not be exact, it may not be perfectly even, but I think that's okay. So from this one here, I want to drop it down to right about there, and then go straight across from that and have another one over there. And then we're gonna come a little farther out and a little farther out. So I will have this one main point where my thread's gonna go down and down and kind of have like a burst effect almost. Okay, and then I wanna come out here and have another little spoke coming out here. I am gonna speed this up a little bit here because it took me a little while to do this part and I don't want you to get too bored watching me. The main thing is I am trying to make sure my lines are straight, and I'm going straight from that center row of holes up to the point, the highest point of each leaf. And then going out from there, I want my next holes to be wider set, farther apart. And then as I'm going down with further holes, I try and move them out a little bit so that the kind of rays of thread will come out at a nice angle. I don't really want them overlapping. I want them each to be on their own path. And if you don't spread out your holes enough, they will kind of overlap on each other. If you feel a little nervous doing this freehand, you could also take a ruler and a pencil and just kind of sketch it out first, go really lightly, and then you can erase the lines after you're done. Or maybe just cut another one and make that your scratch one. So you can kind of plot out ahead of time where you want your lines. Now I'm done poking my holes and I'm going to take my thread and just start putting it through. So I threaded my needle, my tapestry needle, and I'm going from that top hole that I had punched, kind of connected to the rest of my stem. I taped the end of my thread down, and now I'm just going from that, I guess, second from the top hole up through those holes that I have all in that top section of the leaf. But they're all going back through that same hole. So you want that first hole to be kind of large because you're going to go through it several times. And then each little ray is only going through the hole that I punched once. So I think this will make more sense as you see it start to come together here. You see how it's kind of going out from that central point. That's because I keep going down through that same hole. Now I'm going to do just a back stitch to go down farther here and go down to the next hole and just connect this all together. I'm just repeating the same process. So the next kind of main hole, I'm going up through the middle, my farthest point on that section of that leaf, and then I'll keep going back through that one hole and connecting to the other littler holes out at the edge of the leaf. This isn't difficult to do, but it is a little bit time consuming and a bit repetitive, so you might want to put on a show while you go ahead and do your stitching. I'm not going to show the whole process here, but I think you kind of get the idea of what this looks like. So here is my little leaf all stitched up. Definitely not perfect, but I got this fun kind of like starburst sort of effect on it. I really like how that turned out. And off camera, I did a second one on the crushed curry. So that's gonna go up there. And I think I need another layer here. So I cut another one of these leaves out of the green. And I kind of just want to layer this under here because I feel like the yellow is a little too washed out all by itself. Okay, I think in general that's kind of where I want this. It is fairly dimensional on the background of these, so I might just go in with some dimensionals like in the spots where I don't have any thread and just pop it up so that it sits more flat. Now when I'm sticking clusters like this together, you have to work from the back forward, of course. So I want to make sure that this one's in the right spot. I'm not covering anything important. And then I can pull this guy out. And lots of times I use glue, but this is a fairly big piece, so I can just use my tape runner. And then for all these little sprigs and things, I always go and use my liquid glue. And you don't have to put a ton, and you don't have to go all the way down to the ends. I just want enough so that it will hold the base of that and so that it's not like moving around. Okay, I have everything stuck down now. And I used the Avery matte clear shipping labels to type up my journaling because I want it to perfectly fit in that spot. So I'm just peeling the backing off of it. And I have one shot at this. I love how that label paper works. It looks like it's just part of the page. Okay, finishing touch. Quite often I like to add some sort of gem just to add a little bit to my clusters. This is the Cajun Craze and gold dots. They are really pretty. They have like all these little gold flecks in them. Hopefully the camera kind of picks that up. They're really pretty and they match the colors perfectly. Now, when I'm looking for where to add my gems, I do like to kind of look for little holes. So see how there's a little gap right here. And then over on the other side, I kind of like to do like a little triangle. So over on this green will be a good spot. If I do this across from each other, so see how I have like a little triangle going between those 3 points? And I think that's good. I will bring this up for a little close up so you can see the texture. These stamps are so pretty with that kind of faded look to them. Love that. It's just one stamp, but it looks like it's been hand colored. And that little pop of gold just looks so pretty. My cutest little pumpkin. We had such a fun day this day. And I just love that this is scrapbooked. And hopefully we're going to make it over there to pick out some more pumpkins for this fall. So I promised you that I would show you an example of doing more than 3 points of embellishment, and let's do that right now. Okay, I have a very recent example. This was actually the last layout that I posted on my channel, and it has 5 different points of embellishment, right? We have a little one here, our big one here, another little one, kind of a medium sized, and another small one over here. And I was following a sketch for this one as well, but I added more embellishments really because I needed it. So in the sketch, I believe there was some here, 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 and here, which is kind of like a little zigzag of embellishments, right? Like up, down, up. It still looks very balanced because we don't have them all at the same height along the layout. They're all offset, still kind of making triangles. But this one I needed to add because the piece I had my journaling on, there was too much of an empty spot here and it just looked strange. So I added in the embellishing. So yes, it's really good to have the rule of threes and your triangle of embellishments, but you can also diverge from that when it works for your particular layout. And it still ends up being very well balanced and pleasing to look at. Let's have a look at another one. Okay, I started looking through my finished layouts and I found like a whole bunch of examples of different styles of clusters. So here for this Valentine's layout, you can see this is a cluster of hearts. This is really just kind of all over the place. I have these two diagonal from each other, which always creates nice balance. And then on this page, I kind of have a triangle going on. But if you look at these pages kind of across the two together, it kind of ping pongs up and down between all of them. And I still think it works. It looks balanced, but it's not what you would traditionally think of. And these are pretty different clusters for me because my shapes here are hearts. So I have different sizes of hearts, like I talked about, the large, medium, small. And when I was building this, I do have a video on my channel for this layout. I did start with my big hearts first to decide where those were going. And then I filled in with smaller hearts. And then I also have these really cute gold heart sequins, which have a smaller embellishment even still. And my splatter stamping is part of the cluster. And another great way to kind of extend the clusters, kind of have them be a little bit organic shaped and not too tight. I definitely have a tendency to cluster everything really tight, and it's something that I've worked on over time to find ways to help loosen that up, even when I'm not working with florals. The splatters kind of work like leaves. How I use the leaves on the layout I made today to kind of disperse the clusters and make them feel a little bit more natural. Now here's a fun layout that I did recently, and this I rarely ever do, but this is a whole bunch of embellishment clusters. Essentially, I created a grid with the embellishments, right? I have a grid with my photos, then I filled in all the holes with my journaling, with my embellishments. This one I kind of broke out of that grid and actually added some die cuts on top of the photo. Same down here, I added this below the photo. I do have a video of this on my channel, and I think this is such a fun design. It's part of the new Wander and Remember travel book that the CDT just released. All about travel tips for documenting before, on your trip, afterwards, how to pull it together into an album. And I had so much fun creating this and doing so much embellishing. But this is definitely a very different design for me. Now here's another style of embellishing, and I would call these diagonal. And sometimes it's just the way the pages are. There's not a natural place to put another cluster. So to have it 5 or to reduce it and have it only 3 clusters. You can see I'm following the same thing though of having a larger element and then tucking in my smaller elements. Same over here, I have 2 tags layered together and then my leaves tucked in. This is also a video on my channel. Okay, I have one more to show you that is totally out of the box. This was designed by Julie Carrier. This is one of her workshop guides. And this is a beautiful layout, definitely focused on the photos. You're getting lots of pretty patterns in all these frames. But do you notice something? There's one cluster. Yes, you have some, I guess technically embellishment with the title. Then you have some detail over here. But in my mind, there's only really one cluster. And it still works and creates a very beautiful page. So I hope all of these pages give you lots to think about. And if you're ready for some more inspiration, make sure to check out this playlist, which is full of starting points, starting with photos, with design. I'm really breaking down the scrapbooking process here. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again soon with another video.